Yo, we are back, and I have a tie with me this time. I haven't done Oversimplified in like, what, 8 months or something? I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Let's begin, bro. I am...
Click on the link in the description below.
I feel really good, man. We're gonna watch Oversimplified, the Russian Revolution, bro. And we got another NordVPN. How I missed you, annoying sponsorship in the beginning.
To get an amazing 68% off a 2-year plan. Also, commemorating
I don't know why, I just wanted to. Oh.
Evolution merch available now. Link down below. Hey Jimmy, it's the 1800s. An exciting time to be alive. Why don't you get out there
Yes,
and
very
explore the
exciting.
world? Gee whiz, Mom.
Yeah, very exciting.
Thanks. This place
I
is
mean,
amazing.
there was really awesome,
Why, you're
like a
in
lot of
France,
awesome
my
things.
boy. Here we come up with wacky new ways of running a country. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Whoa.
And also bicycles. Well, they were technically made by Germans, but whatever.
Welcome to the United Kingdom. Here we invented the train. Oh, aboard! Holy smokes! You're in a German
Yeah,
factory.
the Germans were known very, very well for their great manufacturing and industrialization. So I think this makes 100% sense.
My friend. Here we harness fire and cold to create all these sexy lederhoses. This is incredible. I can't wait to see where I'll end up next.
Uh-oh. I also like how it went a little bit more towards the east. So that was an interesting detail. It starts with like France and Britain, very far in the west, ending to Germany, and then to Russia. So I actually really like that detail. He does very good attention to detail. And like, so I think France might be slightly more in the western edge than London. I don't know. Like Paris is something like that. I'll have to see later.
Where am I?
By the way, if I look up a lot, that's just because of a map. I'm just looking. I don't know. I love looking at maps. I have 2 maps at my house, one of the United States and one of the world map.
You're in Russia. Have I gone back in time? No,
Nope.
This is just how it is.
This
Are
is
you
just how it
a
is.
farmer? Worse. Technically, my landlord owns me, which makes me a serf. I'm scared. You should be, because I haven't eaten in 4 days, and you look pretty tasty. Hey, Jimmy, how are your travels? I hate you!
The Russian Revolution. We are Russian. We bring back Mother Russia.
Russia in the 19th
Oh, I'm sorry if I offended any Russians. I'm sorry. Most of my audience, I believe, is Russian.
century. Feudal, underdeveloped, and stuck in the past. While the rest
Also, that map's a little inaccurate. I'm pretty sure they had a little more land. Yeah, they had a little more land down there, but maybe he's referring to like longer time ago before they took this, because this was a little later. I'll give him that.
had been modernizing and improving their citizens'
Yeah.
lives. Russia's rulers
okay.
were taking a different approach. My lord, we're falling behind the rest of Europe. It's time to industrialize, give the people rights, and share your power. Russian
Nah.
czars had no
Here's the problem. So, liberalization, right? I'm a free market economist, as you can see from the tie. I'm all about free market economy. So I'm giving it in my capitalist perspective. You can't have that type of free, liberal, democracy type of government if you have like an authoritarian country. That's why China struggles, right? Like that's hard for China or Russia to do because they're naturally trying to be more authoritarian. But in order to, you know, be a economically free country, you gotta be in the word free, right? It's really hard to be a monarch and also like have that free market economy. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, like the Germans were very, very good at that. They were able to balance out the monarch and the free market economy. The monarch was able to, well, stabilize it well. That's why you saw the German Empire succeed so well economically. It was both free market while also having good standards. And that's why I believe the German ideals are probably something we should look through. Something we should follow. I like a lot of their ideas. They've done really well. After that kind of broke down, as you could see, even without like even though they were a lot more of a liberal nation and trying to be more like, you know, France and the UK, you know, back when they were the Weimar Republic, they still were economically doing horrible. And, you know, it's not just because they lost like land, but also it's because of just the economic destruction. They just never were able to bring themselves back. Meanwhile, if they probably had the monarch, things would have been a little better. Me personally. I also think it depends on the monarch. That's another big one. I'm only a minute in. I'm being rude.
Time for pathetic ideas like liberty and modernization because they were
Yeah,
too
right, nerds.
busy having the time of their lives. While the serfs were breaking their backs in the fields, the czars held all the power and they didn't have to listen to anyone.
The other thing, the problem with an autocracy, too, like just pure power, because I think there should be a shared power with a lot of groups, you know? Maybe even a church. I'm not 100% right with it. That's my own personal take. The autocracy, you get all the blame, so you take all responsibility, and you gotta own up to it. You're a leader. You have to be the leader. So, like, the higher level you are, the more of a standard you must do, which means you gotta make better decision making, you gotta be smarter, and you gotta be much more willing to engage with the people. If I were, right, like I don't know, just some random president, I don't have as much responsibility. I think that's the only problem with the presidency. I'm very lucky to vote. Like, I love that. But I'm saying the only problem with it is that if I'm like elected, I'm just there for 4 years, you know? I don't have as much responsibility. I'm probably gonna try my best since, like, you know, I'm not a horrible person, I'm not a politician. But this thing, like, you do have a little less responsibility, you know what I mean? And especially, like, you can put blame on so many other groups. Like, take Joe Biden. If you were, like, an authoritarian, which, that'd be really funny. But if Joe Biden were an authoritarian, who can he blame? Nobody really. Is he gonna blame them? Germany again, Russia oil. You know?
Want to run the country like a backwards feudal kingdom while the rest of Europe outpaces you militarily and economically? Go right ahead. Want to keep the people uneducated so they don't get any ideas? There's no one to stop you. Want to keep exporting grain even when there's a massive famine causing hundreds of thousands to die? That is your God-given right. While all of this was great for the Tsar, if you were literally anybody else, it probably sucked because Russia was falling behind. If they were to keep up with Europe, they'd need a strong ruler with some big ideas. Oh look, here comes one now. Hey everyone, it's me.
If I were leading Russia, the number one thing I would do is I would have to balance out the two biggest problems. One is the intense liberalization and, you know, the industrialization. You can't go so quick with it. I would probably create some kind of plan, you know, I don't know, a 30-year plan or something, where over time you slowly industrialize the nation, which I've mentioned a lot in my videos. And then the number two thing I would probably do is, I guess, like, when you're balancing out that, you also need some level of authoritarianism and strength. Russia is kind of made as a central kind of government, and if you try and go so quick with liberalization, you're gonna get many people angry at you. You need to balance out the elitists and the centralization versus the people and the liberalization. I personally would be very slow with it, and, you know, take a while, and also I would try and have more conversation with the people. You know, like, I know there's a lot of responsibilities to an authoritarian or to a monarch, just to any leader. You gotta do a lot of work. But I think having time for the people is really helpful because you engage with them. Be more of a person. I think that's something important that a lot of leaders don't do anymore. Be like a human being. I would love that in a leader. You gotta be a human being, someone that I, like, actually know. So trustworthy, honorable, and try and be the best kind of person you could be. I also try not to say, like, oh, God sent me as the great ruler. You know, I guess, like, I understand why they did it, right? And, you know, maybe God did pick them. Who knows? I'm just saying, like, don't try and make it come off as you were, like, some God. Like, you know, you're not above God, right? An ambassador of God is the better term. Which it also says in the Bible, we are the ambassadors of God. So I would probably want to be more inclusive with the peoples. Because, you know, they are the ones kind of leading everything. They are truly the ones that you must be the most careful of and the most caring about, because they are still like 90% of the population. 98.
Alexander II, and I've got some big news. I'm releasing you all from your serfdom. You're all free.
Yay.
Yes!
Yep, I'm the best. Oh, there is one thing though. I spoke to your local lords and they weren't happy about losing all their free
Yep.
labor. So as a
There we go.
compromise, you're all gonna have to pay them back a near impossible amount of money for the next 49 years. Expect your lives to barely change. Okay, bye. Now I know what you're thinking.
49 years isn't really too long when you compare to like. So, like, 49 years, right? 49 years. Imagine that as, like, the work time you would do for your, I don't know, like, any landlord or whatever, right? That's your work time, right? Forgive me, there's dog eating food, my dog. So, 49 years, and versus working, I don't know, retirement age in France, like 65 years. If the retirement age was around like 55, then you're just retired and you can chill, which I'm not actually opposed to Social Security. I think it should just be more of like a business thing than a government, officially government thing. I think maybe they should both work together in that. Like, like how corporatist theory states, which I actually like a lot of corporatist ideas. I just don't think you know, it's like this world is not really, if it hasn't been applied or perfected yet, right? If it hasn't still been around yet, I think there probably is some flaws. However, I think it can definitely work in a lot of other aspects. I think you can, have that good mix. I just don't think it's particularly like just a mix of socialism and capitalism. I think there's other elements to it that make it more special than others.
Thinking, this Tsar Alexander II seems like a pretty cool guy. He's trying to reform the country and get Russia on the right path. Everyone must love this guy, right? Wrong.
No.
Why does one man get to decide the fate of everyone in the country?
This is the Russian Enlightenment, except it goes so south that you're below south.
This whole system is dumb. Somebody should do something. Like what? Like kill the Tsar. You're gonna kill the Tsar? Well, me? No. I'm busy.
Nah.
I was kind of hoping you'd do it. Okay. See? The people love me. They're throwing flowers, confetti, and high-grade explosives. Okay, Nicholas, your grandfather has a mild case of being blown up by a
Maybe
terrorist.
that's the number one thing to be careful about when you're trying to go around, engage with a lot of people. You're gonna have someone who's gonna be a hater, and they'll go that extreme. You gotta be careful. I think maybe you should have learned how to avoid bombs like Franz Ferdinand, except he also still died.
And he's not looking too hot, so we're gonna go say our goodbyes, okay? No, it'll be too scary for him. Nonsense, it won't be scary at all. We're just gonna say a quick goodbye. Ready?
It's gonna be cold.
Boy, look at me. The people did this to me. And one day, they'll do it to you! See? Wasn't scary at all. So Alexander II was dead, but luckily, they had another Alexander lying around.
Oof.
Alexander III. And he felt his dad's reforms had weakened the Tsar's authority. Russia was massive, and as a result,
There we go. Now we have this. All these little minorities everywhere.
Ethnic minorities.
Me personally,
Russians? More...
I think like it makes sense, right? But like at the same time, I guess my take for this is I do believe a lot with ethnic nationalism. I'm very heavily on that emphasis. I really do personally believe like one, like you can respect ethnic groups and all that, but like if you have a country and all that, you still have to try and apply with their like ideals. So like the Russian laws, Russian ideals, these groups still must apply those laws. They still have to follow those laws and do their laws, and they still have to go into the culture and join within it, right? However, I do think Russia does have, like, they might not have an obligation, but I think it personally would be better decision making to not try and oppress them. You try and make them want to join within you, and they should have an obligation to try and be within you because, well, they are in your land. Here's the other thing, though. Russia did also conquer these territories where they probably were full knowing that they were going to deal with these ethnic groups. If the ethnic group came into your country, that's when I think it applies. They conquered this all, so I think they have to deal with this. I don't think it's fair that they should, take down all these minority groups, even though they went and conquered those lands. If they went into the country, though, then they should probably go within the greater culture of Russia. That's how I see it, but I think it's a lot more complicated. But whatever. I'm talking way too much.
Interested in their own cultural heritage than in loving me? Isn't it great? So
Yeah. Just hold on, though. Dottie.
much beautiful culture and diversity in our great nation. Alexander thought all these minorities should be a little more Russian, and thereby loyal to him. So he repressed religious minorities. He repressed non-Russians. He introduced the Okhrana, a secret police force that repressed anybody who thought having a czar was dumb. If Alexander II was the great reformer, Alexander III was the great repressor. Now that's how you run a country. Hey, Dad? Ugh, great. It's my son Nicholas, who I like to call a girly girl because he's so weak and pathetic. When are you gonna
That was
grow
real.
up? You still look like a girly girl to me. But Dad, I grew a beard. Yeah, an ugly girly girl beard. If Nicholas was to one day be czar, he needed his dad to teach him how to run the country. But his dad instead suggested that Nicholas go somewhere else. So Nicholas went to Japan, got an edgy dragon tattoo, had his head sliced off by a policeman, and then came home. Now will you teach me how to rule? I suppose it's time. Okay, there's a lot you need to know before becoming czar. Uh-oh. What? I've got kidney inflammation.
That's another giant problem.
Oh, no.
Back then you kind of died a lot more due to, well, there was no, antibiotics or something to help you
On
out.
his father's death, a totally unprepared Nicholas II ascended to the Russian throne. He wasn't a reformer like his grandfather, nor was he a repressor like his dad. Nicholas was Nicholas. Timid, easily swayed, and more interested in doing whatever the hell this is.
Oh yeah, I've seen those pictures, bro.
Or this. Or this.
Just remember too, these people, right? Like, we might still have a very large difference from 100, 200 years back or whatever, but they're still humans. We're still all have that same type of social interaction with each other. We're all gonna make jokes and, play around and have fun. The problem is, this guy's like in his 30s or 40s at this time, so I don't know if he should be doing that stuff. But I'm just saying, like, it wasn't like everyone was all about, social class order, obedience. There was a little bit of other stuff to it. Maybe it was a little different if you were more in the higher class, though. You kind of had to be more of the prestigious, less of a childhood, which that's kind of depressing.
He wasn't ready to rule, and he himself admitted it, saying, "I'm not yet ready to be czar. I know nothing of the business of ruling." Bit of an awkward time to bring it up. However, Nicholas firmly believed that he was chosen by God to be Russia's big daddy. And while he doubted his ability to rule, he was going to give it his best shot. And hey, who knows? Maybe he wouldn't be so bad after all. To get things off to a good start, Nicholas promised free pretzels and beer to a huge crowd in Moscow to celebrate his coronation. So enticing a proposition to starving peasants.
Wait. Oh. Who is that?
The ensuing stampede left nearly 1,500 people dead. What the hell happened? We're not sure, but you're scheduled to go party with the French at 8 o'clock. Shouldn't I stay here out of respect for the people?
Yes, do that. Oh.
Russian czars ever respected the people?
Uh-oh. No.
Nicholas's decision to go party with the French immediately tarnished his image. Some were calling him Nicholas the Bloody. The czars had been partying
Wait, where did the bloody come from? Maybe it's a stampede thing. He just didn't care.
at the expense of the people for long enough.
Or if it was the blood from the French flag. Oh, and by the way, also, I don't think it was these little moments that really shook everything, but they didn't help either. I think it was overall just Nicholas wasn't a great leader. He was just a guy, right? He didn't really have much of the knowledge. I think that was the problem with him. He wasn't like this really, really horrible guy leader, like as a lot of people might depict him. I also don't think he was amazing. I think he was too average, and Russia just needed something above average to keep the Tsardom alive.
That emancipated the serfs, but failed to lift them out of poverty. They used their secret police to crack down on anyone who might criticize them, and they'd failed to modernize and give the people rights, something the rest of Europe had begun doing over a century ago. The rule of the czars was quickly becoming outdated, and more Russians began wondering if there was a better way. For many, the solution was simple. Just look to the West. Republics, democracies, and constitutional monarchies galore. But a small
Well, it doesn't have an official constitution, but whatever.
growing group rejected that for
Nope.
an even better idea.
They're the
something they
worst.
call
This is the dumbest. Probably one of the, like, it's just downright evil sometimes of what they've done.
communism.
Yeah, I hate communism. My hatred of it is greater than anyone could ever think of, especially since I'm a free market capitalist. They hate me.
Take Vladimir Lenin, an intelligent member of Russia's middle class, and also a massive ill-tempered jerk. If you disagreed with him about anything, he wasn't afraid to call you out.
Oh,
You
great. I act just like him, bro.
fat-headed, simple-minded, vapid, cockeyed imbecile. Tenderheart Bear is a far superior Care Bear to Bedtime Bear. And he was no stranger to political unrest either. His older brother was executed for plotting to kill the Tsar, and Lenin himself was expelled from university for participating in a student protest. But how did Lenin go from being a middle-class nerd to the arbiter of socialist divinity? Well, to tell that story, we first need to go back a few decades to when a man named Karl Marx wrote a
I read his book.
manifesto explaining how capitalism is a system whereby the stinky bourgeoisie oppressed and exploited the working masses, and that only through class warfare could the workers rise up and instate a communist utopia.
Bro, oversimplified. You should read. And the state of the classroom proletarian of the bourgeoisie.
Now go back forward a few decades to Lenin reading that manifesto and loving it. But publicly admitting you loved Marx and not Russia's big daddy would get you the cruelest punishment imaginable: exile to Siberia. Enjoy exile, where you'll live with your wife, chill around town, and secretly write socialist
Bro, I should go out like in this costume. That would look so awesome.
newspapers. Hey, that doesn't sound so bad. And your mother-in-law is going to live with you. Once Lenin finished his stint in Siberia, he left Russia for Europe, where he was free to hang out with other Russian Marxists and talk about how great communism was. Now today, you might hear the word communism and think of this.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, these are pretty accurate.
But that's not how
Yeah, that is kind of how it turned out, but remember, like, he's gonna say it right now, but at the time, no one knew that would happen. It was still an experiment of an idea until it's been used like 50 times, and we still want it, which is
intellectuals living under a tough czarist regime saw it. To them, communism promised a land where all were equal, where workers weren't exploited, and even people like you could get a girlfriend. So Lenin joined a party of Russian
I am gonna get a girlfriend. Just you wait. And she'll, like, one day, she'll be on this channel, and she'll, I don't know, do something.
communists living in Europe, and he founded a communist newsletter that was smuggled into Russia to try to radicalize the people. However, not everyone in the Socialist Party agreed with Lenin. In fact, they disagreed with him on a lot of
It's because, like, bro, he was so extreme.
issues. And Lenin
Not every communist or socialist, I think, is, like, evil and awful. I think, you know, some of the more moderate ones, actually, I think they do really want to show a lot of care for the people. I just think their direction they're going is wrong. I would just have a nice little civil debate. You know, and a moderate would be like, I don't know, just wanting free health care, you know, a good system for the people. I would just, you know, debate against that, and we would just talk, and I wouldn't try and go all crazy at them. But they're saying stuff like, not only free healthcare, but like, we gotta make everything free, we gotta make moneyless society, government needs to overstep everything, government superpower. I'm just like, okay, just go to China then. Like, live in Soviet Union. Oh wait, it died. I wonder why.
was so uncompromising that he caused a split in the party. During one conference, a heated debate broke out, and Lenin
Yeah,
was
social
willing to
democracy versus the, like, downright communism. I think, like, social democracy is not really socialism, because, like, Denmark, I'm pretty sure, has some areas where they're more free market than us.
give an inch. You pig ignorant, half-witted, fatuous morons! Cereal is a soup! Listen, Lenin, you're a smart guy, but you have no idea what you're talking about. We're out of here.
That's what my dad says about me, like, all the time. Bro, I think I am Lenin. I'm being honest, I think I am Lenin. Like, my dad always says that. Bennett, you're smart, but you have no idea what you're talking about. Except I'm actually right. Like, I'm not communist.
All in favor of cereal being a soup? Hey, would you look at that? We're in the majority. So Lenin set up his own faction within the party he called the majority, or Bolshevik if you're speaking Russian.
Yep,
And
the
the other faction
Bolsheviks.
became known as the minority, or Menshevik. And oddly, the majority were often in the minority, and the minority in the majority. The Mensheviks were less radical, whereas Lenin wanted the Bolsheviks to be loyal to him and his uncompromising ideas. And if you weren't loyal, well then you're gonna get a big brain beatdown. Mensheviks worried that
Just like the capitalist that he claims, right?
Lenin's
Just saying
attitude
he was
could lead
exactly
to a
like
one-man
them.
dictatorship. But come on, does this guy look like a dictator to you? For now, Lenin remained in Europe, writing his socialist newspaper and impatiently awaiting an opportunity to overthrow the Tsar and bring communist utopia to Russia. A timid, easily swayed Tsar, a massive ill-tempered jerk, impatiently awaiting a communist revolution. And revolution was coming, but not in the way Lenin thought. Back in St. Petersburg, one of the Tsar's most skilled and influential advisors knew the country finally needed to catch up with the rest of Europe. Hey Nick, we really got to industrialize, get more factories, and make some, I don't know, textiles or something. Won't that change the social fabric of Russia? Maybe.
Yep.
Hey, isn't it past your bedtime? But I haven't had my milk and snuggles yet. Will you snuggle me? Nicholas thought modernization was boring, but he let Sergei do his thing. And do his thing he did. He borrowed some money and got Russia some sexy factories. And you know what sexy factories means. Sexy workers. Dirt poor, sexy workers. Long hours.
Yep. I think this is what started the whole communist uprising.
Low wages, filthy disease-ridden factories, sleep in overcrowded dormitories with all your stinky worker friends, get your arms ripped off in a freak Russian doll accident. Conditions were terrible. But this growing working class...
Yeah, and I 100% oppose this, you know? Like, I believe we need that balance between the workers and the factory owners and, you know, the landowners. There should be a good blend and mix. That I'm all about, like, this capitalist free market economy mix, right? I'm all about that free economy market, but, like, you gotta have that balance between the two. I don't think the government should always percent be the interventionists. I actually believe that labor unions are not 100% bad, especially from back then. I think labor unions would make sense at this time. It would make sense, and the government should not intervene so much, unless like something just couldn't be mediated and it had to be with the government. I think there are rare exceptions for the government to intervene with business. And I think like this is a bad living, like, you know, labor unions probably would be much better idea. Labor unions don't make sense as much today, but I'm not 100% opposed to them though.
Wasn't about to take it lying down. They started to do what workers do best. Strike. Despite Sergei's efforts, people in Russia still weren't happy. Peasants were still poor, liberals still wanted reform, and now the workers wanted better working conditions. And the problem with being an autocrat is that when everyone's unhappy, there's only one person to blame.
Yep.
You. The people hate me. What do I do? Ooh, I know. Why don't we find a weak and pathetic nation to go to war with? We'll win easily, and everyone will love me again. Why don't we just try treating the people better? As luck would have it,
They didn't have it in the budget.
an opportunity for war was forming in the Far East. Russia wanted to expand its sphere of influence into northern China, and coincidentally, so did Japan. But Japan didn't really want war, so they proposed an idea to reduce the tension. Hey man, we'll let you do your thing in Manchuria if you let us do our thing in Korea. I don't think so. We've got the largest army in the world. What do you have? I'm the Emperor of Japan. I have a giant mecha suit. Whoa. Cool. Nicholas
And by the way, they weren't really the, you know, largest army. Pretty sure Germany was at the time.
the boys didn't see Japan as a threat, so they felt they could push Japan around. But little did they know Japan had been rapidly militarizing, and when they launched a surprise attack on a Russian fleet of...
And also, I don't believe they were 100% all for war, because Japan was like the one that kind of came in. However, I don't think Russia probably was like trying to leave for 100% peace for everything. Mainly what they wanted was like a route to get the warm water in Russia. That would definitely, I think, was their main objective. I don't think they were like wanting to have a war with Japan though. It just didn't make sense because how far they were. However, I don't think they were like not wanting to go to war. I think if they would go to war, they didn't really see Japan as a threat. They just saw them as a little smidgy thing, especially since Asian countries haven't really won a war against Europe since like 1500 or whatever. I don't know.
Port Arthur. Everyone was shocked. Nicholas hoped it was an opportunity to win a quick war and regain the support of the people. Nobody seriously thought a puny Asian country could defeat a European superpower, and the Russian people were filled with patriotic spunk. Hey everyone, we're
Patriotism.
at war with Japan.
Yay!
Hey everyone, we're losing the war.
Yep.
The Japanese won, an embarrassing defeat for Tsar Nicholas. Russia had enough problems, but now it had been internationally humiliated. The public were outraged. Unrest increased. Nicholas needed snuggles now more than ever. The tension was rising rapidly, and Russia was on the verge of revolution. All it needed was one disaster to push it over the edge. And that
Yeah.
disaster would come in January 1905 from an unlikely source, a handsome Orthodox priest named Father Gapan. Father Gapan was leading workers and their families to the Winter Palace, but this wasn't some violent uprising. It was a peaceful protest. They wanted to deliver a petition to Nicholas, which simply asked for more freedom and better working conditions.
Yeah, better working conditions, better working hours, limitations on state official powers, state officials' power, introduction of a national parliament. You know, I actually really think these are good ideas. What is he gonna do with them? You know, me personally, I think the biggest extent could be like, you know, I personally favor with some level of unions. You know what I mean? And maybe at this time, a lot like union strength would be probably a decent idea, but not to the point where they would get corrupt. Obviously, better working hours. I think the best probably working hours you could want. Remember, like at the time, you couldn't really stretch so forward. You couldn't really afford to have really good hours. Probably 10, 10 to 12. I think you should, you know, 5 to 9's horrible, you know, but like it's something you have to do. That's just how life is. I think that the best you should probably want it at like 8 hours, which five, six, yeah, like 8 hours. 8 hours is a lot, man, but it could always get worse. I think 8 hours should probably be like now, like you know that's probably a good time, you know, because it's 8 hours of work. Like I personally think that's pretty fine. Anything shorter, I think, is really stupid. 8 to 12 hours, and I think it should be optional where you do it, or you know, like because it all depends on if the guy can do it. You know, like if he can't do on one day 12 hours, another day on 8 hours. I think like give them the opportunities and abilities. And if your workers really do care, they're gonna be more motivated to do things for you. You know, and you know I love I love the little heart there.
Conditions. The protest was actually so
What are
peaceful
they
and
gonna do?
respectful that the Marxists thought it was a big waste of time. Hey Nicholas,
Lame.
some priest is leading a peaceful protest. Says here they want to give you
A
a
peaceful
petition.
protest
A
from a
peaceful
priest?
petitioning priest? I better get out of here. Nicholas had actually left the
Alliteration.
Winter Palace days earlier, and in his place, they brought in a truckload of troops,
Bruh.
ordered to stop Father Gapan from reaching the palace. Hello, good sir, and long live the Tsar. Please, allow me to pass this simple petition to our dear father, Nicholas II. Good day to you too.
Bruh.
Please, allow us to respond by opening fire.
That is just so awful.
What began as a peaceful protest ended in tragedy. Imperial soldiers opened fire on the crowd. Around 200 civilians died, 800 more were wounded. All they wanted was the opportunity to ask Nicholas to improve their lives.
Look at this poor little girl. Bruh. Russia just sucks, man. Russia just sucks.
Instead,
Like, just the governments that ran it have always done a lot of horrible decision making. That's what I mean. I think the Russian people, they've been through the worst of the worst. I give so much respect to them because, like, you know, in the West you'll have America was the always man, or you know, Britain was always man. Now they had it much easier. Like, bro, they got the industrialization. They got the pleasure of having great trade and great resources. Meanwhile, guess what Russia's dealing with? You have such corrupt governments that do a lot of horrible things. You know, Nicholas, I think Nicholas was just so naive and made a lot of bad decision making. But the guy wasn't like a horrible leader. I think he did a lot better stuff later on. We'll get to that in, I guess, in like part two. I do kind of think the military, I have a little different take than oversimplified on it.
they were met with bullets. Nicholas didn't personally order the troops
Yeah,
to
he
fire,
didn't.
but as an autocrat, he got the blame. The event became
I
known
don't
as
know
Bloody
who probably wanted that. I'm thinking like the military generals saw it as like a dangerous protest and they were like automatically ready for that. That's why I'm thinking like, but It's whatever.
Sunday, and Nicholas's reputation plummeted. Strikes erupted across the empire. Workers' demands increased. Liberals demanded political power. Peasants demanded land. The country was out of control, and the 1905 revolution had begun. Listen, Nicholas, peasants seizing my land and murdering my family I can tolerate, but illegally chopping my wood? That's obscene! And the worse I treat my workers, the more they strike. I don't get it. Everyone relax. As long as the military is still on my side, there's nothing to worry about. Sir, the sailors are starting to mutiny. Well, my life just sucks. With Russia still losing to the Japanese.
Did learn about that, like the revolution from my most popular video in Russia, right? Russian revolutions. Let's see if we can put those views up there.
Unrest was growing in the military, and some sailors had even taken to killing officers. Having the people against you was bad enough, but if the military joined in, it would be game over. To make matters worse, in October, workers and Marxists, including one Leon Trotsky, began setting up local elected councils called Soviets that coordinated strikes and supplied the workers. Sergei could see the writing on the wall. Things were going south fast, and he needed a big idea to save the Tsar. And luckily, he had just that. You see, all these angry people from different parts of society weren't really working together, meaning there was a weakness to exploit. Sergei wrote a manifesto that would give the liberals an elected assembly called the Duma. It took some convincing, but eventually, Nicholas agreed to share power and have his laws approved by an elected assembly. Hey, liberals, here's your stupid manifesto. Happy now? We certainly are. But what about these guys? Aren't you going to give them what they want? Oh, goodness no. I was just going to kill them. With the liberals satisfied, and after ending the war with Japan, the Tsar brought thousands of troops home, who then dismantled the Soviets, arrested their leaders, and crushed the peasant uprisings in the countryside. And how about that pesky parliament Nicholas had agreed to share power with? Well, he then wrote a bunch of new laws, which basically said, hey, remember that manifesto I wrote and how you guys were going to approve my laws? Slight change of plan. Actually, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and you guys are going to shut up. What? The people won't stand for this. People? What people? You know, this is why people don't like you. And just like that, Nicholas had survived the 1905 revolution. But wait, a revolution? In Russia? Where was Lenin? Well, Lenin and his communist pals were still in exile. He tried desperately to radicalize the uprising, but all he could do was watch. As the movements failed to organize, the liberals sold out the poor, and the Tsar played the people. Furious, he believed Russia had missed a great chance for a real revolution. From now on, he felt the only way left was an armed revolution by
When a Hearts and Fire 4 revolution fails.
the workers. Watching the events of 1905 unfold, Lenin learned a lot. The Tsar, however, would prove to have learned nothing. After the 1905 revolution had failed, the Tsar's new top man was Pyotr Stolypin, and he had big ideas to prevent any more chaos. Step 1, reform agriculture. This'll make the peasants love you. And step 2, will kill anyone who doesn't. To discourage any more revolutionary ideas, Stolypin began to crack down even harder on the Tsar's opponents, and thousands were sentenced to death. The noose even earned itself a new nickname, Stolypin's necktie. I don't get it. Oh, I see, because it goes around my neck. That's so funny. But despite the oppression, many positive reforms were also being made, and the Russian economy even began to improve.
Alright, I told you it shouldn't be Czar, economic downturn. Can I buy a Porsche yet? Rich. I mean, we're rich. Russia's economy. Yeah, the Czar wasn't, like, in fact, the worst. He actually, it got a little better over time. I think he just started out not really knowing what to do, and over time he was trying to learn more, and things were starting to get a little bit better there. But still, the government did a lot of horrible decision making.
This was a problem for Lenin. If the people weren't suffering, then they wouldn't support a revolution. Still in
Okay, so by that logic, like, you have to have everyone suffering and doing the worst and worst of everything in order for the revolution to happen. So you're saying things are doing pretty decent. They have see, like, it's the countries that have to suffer the most that become communist, and that's why you see the capitalist countries, like me, are not turning communist, and and it broke Karl Marx's prediction, which he said that they would rise up and it would all happen like Britain, London, France, Paris, DC, New York in the USA and stuff like that. But nope, didn't happen. Also, I don't think he talked about the USA. I think it was more on just Europe. But whatever, back to the point.
exile and lacking
Only
funds,
happened
the
in the
Bolsheviks
poor
simply
countries that suffered, like China, Russia,
weren't in a position to do
Vietnam,
anything.
most of
Luckily, it was around
Africa.
this time that Lenin met an incredibly handsome Georgian with your second favorite historical mustache, Joseph Stalin.
And don't forget Pot.
Lenin and Stalin met at a communist convention in Finland, and Lenin liked Stalin because he was a real go-getter and was great at fundraising for the Bolsheviks. And by fundraising, I mean kidnapping, robbing, extorting, bribing, ransoming, assassinating, prison breaking, stealing, bank raiding, executioning, and stealing again. Hey Stalin, the Mensheviks aren't so hot in all this stealing, but we still need money. So the next time you do a big heist, just do it quietly. Okay, quietly. Got it. If this isn't quiet, I don't know what is. Stalin's wacky antics eventually got him exiled to Siberia, but he had established himself as a...
Which I talked about, I believe, almost 2 years ago in some of my old videos, which you should check out.
Big Bull's Bolshevik. However, no amount of Bolshevik bulls could stop what was happening. The Russian economy was making a recovery. For the Tsar, things were looking up. This is great. All Nicholas has to do is sit back and not mess anything up. Hey everyone, big news. I'd like to introduce you to my new best friend. He's a crazy, drunken, beardy, horny, scandal-ridden magic wizard man, and he smells like a goat. We're screwed. Rasputin. A dirt-poor peasant from dirt-poor nowhere. But unlike all the other dirt-poor peasants, Rasputin had holy healing powers. And when this holy mystic wandered into St. Petersburg, people began to notice. He quickly became famous, and word of this mystery man and his healing hands made its way to the royal palace. The appearance of a holy homeless healer was of great interest to the Tsar and his...
He also wasn't 100% bad. I think some of his policies were on things like, oh, Russia shouldn't just be going to a bunch of wars. Russia should be a little bit more on the religious side. Russia should just, like, try and show a little more kindness and respect. Like, he wasn't particularly a bad person. He wasn't from, like, anything rich, you know? So I don't really oppose a lot of on him. I just do think he was kind of a weirdo in a lot of cases. But he did help out the family. So I don't see why they should have just kicked him out and been so rude to him.
Wife. As far as royals go, they weren't that inbred, but they were just inbred enough for their son Alexei to get hemophilia, or in layman's terms, Mamma mia, that's a lot of blood. Knowing Rasputin could heal people, in 1906, Alexandra asked for Rasputin to come and see if he could cure their son. And crazy as it sounds, Rasputin did heal Alexei, possibly by taking him off his doctor-prescribed aspirin.
Another big one was he was calming down the mother and calming down the child, and when the blood flows a lot slower, it causes bleeding to happen significantly less. So, yeah, that was another major theory, which I think that one's a little more accurate.
Having seemingly done the impossible, Rasputin became very, very close to the royal family. But having a crazy homeless wizard man hanging around wasn't a good look for the Tsar, because Rasputin was freaky. Not only was he a big fan of alcohol, but he'd also throw these crazy parties with Russian nobility, where he'd and all night long, and then he'd his whole head hypnotic eyes, and nobody knew how the goat got on the roof. Initially, the press were banned from talking about Rasputin, but eventually, the ban was lifted, and the tabloids went to town. The whole thing was a huge scandal, and everyone was freaked out that this guy was influencing the Tsar and his wife. Nicholas could have spent this period of relative peace improving his image. Instead, he spent it doing this. But as weird as the whole Rasputin thing was, so long as the economy continued to improve and the people's lives kept getting better, maybe Nick would be okay. Maybe there would be no more revolutions. Maybe this video could even end right here. Or maybe things were about to get worse. A lot worse. You see, the year is 1914, and that means it's time for World War I.
In which, probably the worst decision making for Russia was when they jumped into the war. So they, like, automatically were getting the troops ready and, you know, mobilizing and they jumped into that so quickly that they didn't comprehend any turns of peace. So, like, that was probably the biggest mistake for Russia. From here, let's like this video. I really enjoyed it. Oversimplified makes awesome content. I'm so glad. He's almost at 10 million subscribers. But we need that video. We need that video right now. I'll see you later, and thank you so much for watching. And, yeah, goodbye.